Hey guys, it's me. It's Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you have time, please give this video a thumbs up, pass it on to somebody else who might like it as well, and drop us a positive comment in the comment section. So, I was talking to a Capricorn. Now, Capricorns always amuse me because as soon as they start talking, I'm just like, here we go. And the women are iffy. Sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's another one. But the men Capricorn men really have the funniest time. So let me tell you what this guy was telling me. He told me that he was seeing an Aquarius. At the end of the second month, he said it was like 3 days before it would have been 2 months. She totally ghosted him. Okay? So he told me he didn't do anything. He's like, Queen, I didn't do anything. I didn't say nothing. And I was like, really? So she ghosted you for no reason at all, right? You ain't say nothing. You ain't do nothing. All right, let's talk about it. So he made an appointment to get a reading. So I called him for his reading. As soon as we started talking, before I even had a chance to, really say anything, really, as soon as I said hello, I had the headset on, I'm like, hello. And he starts going in about how he wants to break the reading up into 15-minute intervals. And we're going to talk about this, and this. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm the one doing this reading. Is he serious? So I didn't say nothing because he spent his money. So if that's what he wants to do, that's what we're going to do. So I was like, okay, well, let's start where you want to start at. So he wanted to start talking about the Aquarius. So he said, yeah, he was seeing her. It was 2 months, a couple days shy of their second month. She ghosts him. She blocks him on everything. He stopped by her job. I was like, never go to somebody's job. I don't care what's up. He stops by her job because he couldn't contact her any other way. So he said he just sat outside in the parking lot and was hoping to see her walk by, okay? So he's sitting outside in the parking lot, she walks by, and then he tries to talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to him. So she goes inside the building. She won't stop and talk to him. She goes inside the building. Security comes outside and asks him to leave, okay? And I was like, that's what you get for going to her job. But I didn't say that to him at that time. I said it later. But we laughed about it later. But I was like, that's what you get for going to her job. So anyway, security asked him to leave. He didn't want to get arrested, so he left. So he said to me, this is a couple days later, that he's really upset about it. Not only because she ghosted him, but because of how he was treated. He feels like he was treated badly. I feel like that's what he get for going to her job. When you go to somebody's job, you get what you get. One thing about this, this dating game, you don't play with nobody's money. I don't care what I went through in my relationships. I never played with nobody's money. Okay? Let people make their paper. So going to their job with this a romantic bullshit after 2 months, not even a whole 2 months, was not cool. Period. So I got him to understand that later. So then he told me, he said that he just doesn't understand why she ghosted him. And I said, well, let's talk about what happened during the relationship. What disagreements did you have? Because usually with an Aquarius, if you think about the disagreements, that's what made them leave. So he said, well, we only had a few. I said, a few? In 2 months, you already had a few disagreements? Like, are you serious? I've been around people for a year and didn't have a disagreement yet. So he said that they had about three disagreements that he told me about. And I said, well, what happened? How did y'all have a disagreement that quickly? And he said the first disagreement was because he wanted to go to one bar for their, wherever they were going that night. And she wanted to go to a different bar. So they ended up getting into a little bit of a disagreement about it. He said it wasn't a full-fledged argument, but basically she said that she wanted to go X. He told her no, and they ended up going where he wanted to go. First red flag. Aquarius don't like that. So I knew right then and there, I was like, she didn't like that. She gave in for whatever reason, but she didn't like that. Then the next thing he said they argued about was a couple weeks later. Now, they were sexually active very quickly. like on like the second date, okay? So he told me that they got into a couple weeks into it. They had sex about 12 times by now. And they got into another their first. It was their second disagreement, but it was a bigger blow up than the first one. Put it like that. So he said, basically what happened was is that he wanted her to come to his house when they saw each other to be intimate, because his home was closer to the highway and closer for both of them to get to work. Makes logical sense. The Aquarius was okay with going over there sometimes, but she didn't want to go to his house every time. You see? She wanted him to come to her house sometimes and vice versa, to kind of switch it up, And also, she didn't like being away from home because he wanted to see her every weekend, And she didn't like being away from home for the entire weekend. She has a pet, stuff like that. So she was saying to him, okay, it's cool. Yeah, I agree with you. It is easier on Monday morning to drive to work. But she was like, my pet is there. Can we spend some of our time over at my place? And then he said, well, it's too much gas going back and forth. So they got into basically a little tiff about it. And the Aquarius was like, well, I guess we won't be fucking no more because I'm not going to keep coming to your place. And so they had a little harsh interaction then, but they worked it out. Aquarius decided that she would continue coming to his place, and he said that he would drive her back to her place on Saturdays so she could feed the dog and do some things and not have to have her neighbor do it and all that kind of stuff. So they basically compromised on it. But again, the Aquarius, I felt like, wasn't just saying that because of those reasons. I felt like she needed some freedom every weekend, Friday to Monday morning. I think the Aquarius wanted some freedom and she didn't quite know how to articulate it. So they worked it out that kind of way, and he said things went back to being smoothly. Now, the night before she ghosted him, they had a conversation about marriage. Now, mind you, they weren't planning on getting married at that moment, but he was telling her what he expected from his wife. And I was like, what do you expect from your wife? Yo, I'm trying to tell y'all, this man is like a caveman. Okay? And I'm telling you, some women would like what he is proposing, but this woman wasn't feeling it. And so the last argument was because he said he basically wanted his wife to stay home. He wanted a stay-at-home wife. He wanted her to have some kids. She doesn't want to have children at all. He wanted her to stay home. She doesn't want to stay home. She has some kind of cause, Aquarius and our causes, some kind of cause that she does, and she wants to go do it. He wants her to stay home. He wants her to, have these kids that she don't want to have. And basically he wasn't making a plan for tomorrow, but he was saying this is what he wanted to go towards. He wants to buy a house in the suburbs. To me, it didn't sound like a bad plan, but it sounded like, to her and to me, who's an Aquarius, restricted. You got to be in the house all the time, under my thumb, doing what I want. That's what it sounded like to me. And I was like, if it sounded like that to me, I'm damn certain it sounded like that to her. So the next morning after this conversation, they just talked, and it was just talk. It wasn't like a plan. It was just talk. What would you want if you got married? Well, what do you want? Just that kind of conversation. The next morning when he woke up, he was blocked on everything. And he said to me he didn't understand because he didn't do anything wrong. And I said, honey, you didn't do anything quote unquote wrong, but you exhibited to her that this relationship was not what she wanted. It was more restrictive. And I was like, I know you don't see it that way. I know you see yourself as being a stand-up guy and whatever the case is. But I was like, to her, to somebody like me that's listening to this sounds restrictive. This sounds like bondage. Okay? You don't want her to go to work. You want her to be with you during all her free time. she probably was feeling stifled, and it's only been 2 months. And he said they had a wonderful sex life. So I'm like, well, I guess, maybe she was really enjoying the sex, and that's why she hung in there for 2 months. But when they had that conversation about marriage, and I had to point that out to him, I said, when y'all had that conversation about marriage, number one, it was a little bit premature. But number two, the things you said were not the things that she wanted. And she knew from listening to you that this shit wasn't going to go well. And if she don't dip now, she's going to end up in a situation she doesn't want to be in. So as an Aquarius, fight or flight, time to go. Deuces. So instead of saying anything, which is my only thing, is that she should have said something. I would have at least sent them an email or a text and said, hey, you're nice. I like the time that we spent together, but this isn't going to work for me long term. So I would have just said something. She didn't say nothing. She just disappeared. And then you add gasoline to the fire by going to her job. So we talked about it. He finally understood. He didn't really understand, but he finally accepted what I was saying, that this was not for her, bottom line. And that there may be a woman out there that this is a wonderful deal. Maybe there's a woman out there that wants this deal, because I know a lot of sisters who would love it. They would love it. Some of them would hate it. Some of them would love it. So you just got to keep on asking until somebody is interested in what you're proposing. That's all. And maybe don't ask an Aquarius. Not in this case. Ask someone who's more traditional, Ask a Taurus, okay? You might get a yes. Ask a Capricorn. Ask somebody else, and you might get a yes to your proposal, is what I told him. So he finally came to terms with it, and everything is fine now. But the bottom line is that I wanted to tell this to you guys because I wanted you to see just how easy it is to turn an Aquarius off, how quickly we ghost, and the reasons why people will say, I didn't do nothing. I didn't say nothing. And I'm like, you didn't say anything wrong in your mind, but to the Aquarius, you said a lot. You said, honey, you're going to be in bondage for the rest of your life doing what the hell I want you to do. And if you don't like it, I'm going to bitch and nag at you until you do it. And she saw herself with gray hair crying in the mirror for 10 seconds of freedom. And she headed for the hills. So one thing I'll tell you, if you were in like with an Aquarius, in love with an Aquarius, that kind of thing, don't try to possess them. Don't try to put them in a cage, And I feel like that happens a lot with Capricorn and Aquarius. I feel like a lot of times Capricorn likes the beauty of the Aquarius. They like that spontaneous, wild, fun nature, but they want to cage it for themselves. They don't want you out there being free, having fun. They want to cage you and have that beauty all to themselves sitting up on a shelf somewhere. And for an Aquarius, that's not going to work. We're not going to be that beautiful thing, that beautiful being, if we're caged up. We're going to be sad. We're going to be depressed. We're going to be detached. You have to give an Aquarius space for us to be our true self. So just remember that. And I'm not talking about disrespect. I'm not talking about, some people will tell me, oh, the Aquarius didn't call me for a week. I'm like, nah. We know how to communicate, we don't always do it the best. But come on, disappearing weeks at a time from your significant other, that's not copacetic. So if you're in love with an Aquarius, just remember that trying to possess and control them is what's going to make them fly away. Okay? All right, guys, it's great to see you. I hope you have a wonderful week. Come back soon because I have a lot more to say. And if you would like to have a reading, email me. I got your back. All my information is underneath this video. See you later.